Hey,
Welcome.
yeah,
I'm Phil.
and I'm Phil.
And here we are on the Phil and Phil show. And this week we have a special guest, Ronnie Wylde. And he's going to be talking about dopamine. So it's quite an exciting show. Um, Anything you want to say before we jump in, Phil?
Yeah, Ronnie, this is a new one for me. Phil's been talking about Ronnie for quite a while, and it sounds really interesting. So I'm really interested to hear what he's got to say. I'm really looking forward to it.
So I'm going to let him in. And there's Ronnie.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Ronnie.
Hey, Ronnie.
Hey, guys. Thank you so
Welcome.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you for your flexibility. Yeah, it's literally the last 3 days I've been running, and so my client actually reminded me. He's like, "Hey, I think you have a podcast." I'm like, "What?" I was like, "Oh, yeah." So I'm like, "Oh yeah." We just adjusted our flow, and appreciate you guys and your flexibility.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for jumping on our little show that we have. It's just, just two guys hanging out, having fun, and I've enjoyed watching you and over the years, Ronnie, and yeah, I got your book many years ago and saw you at a longevity conference, and just watching you and watching your development, your evolution, like our show is evolving out loud, and just watching you evolve out loud over the years has just been a beautiful experience. And then yeah, so I was like, I had you on my list of like people to get on the show because you're very inspiring, and you're really on it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Phil, yep.
So is this Pete?
This was Phil and Phil. So Phil's in. Where are you, Phil, right now?
Oh yeah, hi Ronnie. I'm Phil. I'm in a little country village in England near Oxford.
Wow, cool. Pleasure to meet you, Phil.
Yeah, really nice to meet you too.
So yeah, I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, and are you in Texas right now, Ronnie?
I'm in good old Austin, Texas right now.
Holding down the fort, the last stronghold of the United States.
Yeah, it's like the last stand at the Alamo. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I'll just now know what we're gonna get into. We can get into anything you want, but man, what an interesting time to be alive.
Totally. I mean, we're just being hit full on all sides, and it's like, it's like we can't retreat and go off it'd be nice to go off into the woods and just like hide out, but it's almost like we're being called to do this, but then at the same time, like we're being full on hit with like this dopamine stimulation. We're like going online, trying to find information out, and it's just like this constant hit. And I think that's why you're doing this program, because you're seeing that like we're just being sucked into this matrix. And it's like, I mean, I find myself, do I need to know this? Should I just hide out and meditate? Or like, it's this constant, like, well, should I learn this information? And like, well, I need to know that like this whole virus thing is a hoax because I'm going to educate people so they don't get vaccinated. And like, it's just this balance, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's a great thing to bring into the conversation, because this is my eternal challenge, right? Like being an educator, being a OCD when it comes to research, and once I go down a rabbit hole, it's like zoom, and I have to go through the whole circuit before I can come out of it. And then that's good. That's part of my role, but I also see the shadow side of that, which is like becoming addicted and obsessed about something that may not be practical in the day-to-day life. Like we still have our lives, and I think that's the biggest thing. And especially with this dopamine reset, I'm trying to help people integrate back into their actual reality versus getting caught up in the hologram, the media, the different articles, all this fragmented information that may or may not make a huge difference in somebody's practical life. And so I want to help people just have that integration of like, yes, okay, everything we've been told is a lie or a version of the truth, and that's part of the deconditioning process. But there's also a spiritual perspective, right? Which is that what's happening is happening one way or another. You know, no matter how much all the information I have, it doesn't, well, I don't know, it may change something, but there's a fine line, right? Because we could easily become uselessly informed and just completely blown out and exhausted and just have like, you know, mental fatigue and spiritual exhaustion, be like, oh my God, like what is going on? You know, so there's that middle ground, right? Like of really making health primary, and self-care primary. And really, I think ultimately this is an opportunity for us to reevaluate our priorities.
Yeah, I think
That's,
that's really,
yeah.
it's really interesting, Ronnie, what you're saying, because I find myself asking myself that question and asking other people that question, which is that information really useful? Can you do anything with it? And is it going to help you or anyone else that you know? And lots of the time now, actually, the information that we're being bombarded with actually is no use at all. And what people are doing, rightly what you're saying, is they're getting sucked down that rabbit hole and they're forgetting their nutrition, their exercise, their sleep, their
Mhm.
water, their smoothie, their
Yeah.
juice, their meditation, enemas, saunas, whatever it is that really grounds us and brings us into our human experience. And I think that's actually really important, is to remember that we're here having a human experience and it's our experience. And if we get scattered with all those other experiences, we're no use to anybody, which is I think is what you were saying.
Dude, that's right on. That's well said. That's exactly it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure that like people who are in the whole vortex of the mainstream media and like that entrainment of that is like the worst ever. So at least many people have broken out of that, but then are we being sucked into a whole other entrainment or a whole other vortex?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, are we in? Are we going?
We're going. Yep, we're live.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, this is
Okay, got it. All right.
Ronnie, this
Yeah.
is live. This is recording. We're on it, man.
Okay,
We don't mess around. We just like guys. We just sat down in a room together and we're hanging out. So.
Okay, awesome.
So
All right.
maybe tell us about what is dopamine and like what got you into like being inspired to do this program and what are kind of the problems we're seeing. So maybe that's a
Yeah,
good.
beautiful, beautiful. Okay, well, let me take a deep breath now. Now that I know we're full on in. Okay, well, first of all, it's awesome to be here, and yeah. So, okay, so I've been really focused on, as you know, I've been really focused on holistic health and nutrition for a little over a decade now. I've been a public speaker and author and toured around the country, on and off for a while, just giving lectures on raw foods and superfoods and talking about herbalism and all the different things that go into, holistic health care. Because that's a really important thing too, is that we're going through a transition where we've given our power away to healthcare systems, to financial systems, to governmental systems to take care of us. And that's what they call the nanny state, right? Like we've basically been or at least an entire generation has been taken care of, more or less, or the illusion of. And so it's created some kind of codependency dynamic, to our government and all government institutions and functions, and particularly the healthcare system, right? We offer over our own personal responsibility to a system that may or may not have our best interests in mind and may or may not actually know the first thing about health, right? It's really disease management, disease care, sick care, and it has its utility when it comes to surgical intervention or emergency care. If someone has an accident or something, that's really where Western medicine shines. But in everything else, it's pretty much like downhill. It's not the path that we need to be on. And I find self-responsibility is the key to everything. It's the key to evolving, evolving out loud, as your show is, and really taking responsibility for our health and everything else, so we can actually start to learn, okay, what do I need to do for myself? If I've created a codependency and misplaced the government as the parental figure, you know, because there's a multi-generation of people that didn't have a father or didn't have a mother or had some dysfunction in their family unit, and maybe they didn't go through the developmental process as a child, and then growing out of that dependency and becoming interdependent and making choices for themselves. I see a lot of people still have a lot of those patterns going on. So I think that's also part of what we're seeing from a psychological perspective of people that are still very dependent. So they're very fearful and they're scared and they're insecure, and their reality may be getting shaken up quite a bit. So they're going to go one or two ways. They're going to go kind of more the spiritual way, which is to actually take responsibility and to realize, okay, like I've been lied to. What they're telling me is not true. It doesn't line up with the science, doesn't line up with the evidence. So I need to actually learn for myself what is the truth. Or there's a lot of other people that are just going right into the program and they're doubling down on it, right? No, 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 masks are good, right? Because like the science says so. And it's like a program when you listen to people, especially now, right? We've gotten to the point where there's enough information, there's enough evidence, there's enough people from platforms on loudspeakers telling you that the masks don't work. In fact, they've never worked. There's no science behind it. And the micron size of a virus is so small that actually these masks wouldn't protect you from anything anyways. All that information is out there, but there's a particular program that's running. It's a control program where people will become complicit with the program or the agenda, and instead of breaking out of it, they'll double down on the lie just to reinforce the lie, because otherwise you would have to realize like that I've actually been lied to, and that's very uncomfortable, right? So I think that's probably worth opening the conversation up right there, just kind of understanding what's taking place at the psychological level, and where we actually have to be very very vigilant with the information that's coming at us. And to the point of how we opened up this conversation, how much information are you going to take in? How many times do you have to keep going over the same thing? Or even for me personally, I just speak for myself, because I'm very much like a rabbit hole researcher. Like I go deep into anything because I have an innate desire to learn. And also because I'm a speaker, a coach, a teacher. Like I take what I learn, I transmute it, I integrate it, and then somehow it comes through in whatever way it does. But there's a boundary that needs to be put up for all of us when it comes to these digital devices. I call it the virtual reality interface, where we've gotten so plugged in to a plug-in drug, whether it's the television, it's the television, right? That was enacted in July 2nd, 1928. And the whole thing with the television was to basically keep people surrounded by this holographic artificial reality of perception based on the programs that were coming through the television, right? How crazy is that, right? We've all grown up, all of our parents have grown up in a reality that was manufactured for us. And so that's caused us to misinterpret the whole of reality. And it's not until people actually break away from that and they get into nature, or they get into cleansing, and they go through some kind of initiation to initiate them back into humanness. I think that's probably the best way. And you've made, Phil, you kind of brought this up, and I'll take a pause on that.
Yeah, I mean that's for me. I wasn't brought up with television. I didn't have a television. I don't think we had a television until I was talking about it with my mum. I think I'd have been 5 or 6 years old before we had a television, and we didn't have a telephone until I was 11.
Mm-hmm.
So and I lived out in the sticks. I lived in a very rural life, so I was very connected with nature. I wanted nothing to do with the television when it came. I wanted nothing to do with computer. My mates were playing the very early video games. I had no interest at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to go out and shoot things when I was young.
Yeah, like do things.
so that's my background, Ronnie. Really, is I've come from being. I grew up. My grandfather and my father were both gamekeepers, so they shot, and I shot. So I grew up very much in the woods, on the land, and farming. So if I wasn't out with them, gamekeeping, forestry, farming, or farming, that's where I was. So for me, the connection to nature is absolutely crucial. And if we're not connected to nature, we go mental, literally. And one of the things that struck me when I was young was alcohol. So for me, my my disconnection was soothed with spirit, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and if you look at all the natives that have been taken off their land, and I don't think it matters what culture,
Yeah.
people that have been really connected with nature and get taken off and they lose their connection with nature and therefore spirit, they all end up on the spirit.
The end.
And that,
Wow. Yeah.
and that was my thing was alcohol. And I never understood, but spirit, no wonder people that have had a life connect, because people, even though my granddad and my dad were, especially my granddad, even though they were, shooting and killing things for their job, for their living, so to speak, my granddad was so connected to nature, so connected. And
Mm-hmm.
within that, he was a really spiritual man, but he would never proclaim to be spiritual.
Uh-huh.
And and for me, that disconnection was so painful. But of
Mm.
course, at that age, you don't realize that that's what it is. You just found, I found myself lost in this big world because I'd been taken out of nature, and 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 I drank. And now looking back and studying cultures, whether it's the Native Americans, the Aborigines, no matter who they are, they all turn to alcohol.
That's a really powerful insight. And yeah, when we've seen that happen time and time again, and it's really a tragedy because we do know that nature really is the it's like the healing command for our. You said something really interesting, Phil, which is when people are out of nature and they're in the cities or they're on these technology platforms, they go mental. And that's the plight of our world in this day and age, is that we have this over intellectual development, this over mentalizing our lives instead of actually experiencing our lives. And that's there's a lot of things that can be talked about there. But yeah, it's no wonder that we have to turn to these compensatory strategies, like strategies to compensate for the existential angst or the anxiety, the depression, the inability to feel, even just being numb, right? Being numbed out from this human experience. And that's the biggest challenge I see. And that's why going through a dopamine reset protocol that actually helps people understand that, first of all, like biochemically, addiction really is about chasing pleasure to avoid pain. So there's the emotional component, there's the psychic component, then there's the chemical component of our dopamine, or what's called the dopaminergic pathways, which are just really there. One of the ways that I look at it is like dopamine is triggered in the anticipation of a future event. So the anticipation of going to get that coffee, the anticipation of having a cigarette to like relax the system or something, right? To calm or to create some kind of relief, the anticipation of going out and watching pornography or getting drunk at the pub or whatever the thing is, right? So that dopamine is triggered in the anticipation of a future event, but we all know that when that thing happens, it's never as good as we thought it would be. And so there's a lull that happens. It's like an up and then a down. There's a high, then there's a crash. And then that creates that really just creates a weakness in the system, a weakness in the spirit, and that can create an addictive tendency or a neuroassociative condition where somebody has a thought of a future like state that they want to feel, and then they associate the habit with helping them get there. You know, like for example, coffee. So someone feels down or whatever, they have some coffee, they feel great, they feel up, they have all this dopamine, serotonin flooding, as kind of all these endorphins are kicking on. And then there's the lull, or maybe it's good one day, but then the next day someone's like, oh, well, that coffee made me feel that way. I want to feel that way. I don't want to feel the way I feel. So let me do that to get through this day. But then this day becomes the next day and the next day. And then what we have is an addiction cycle. Um, so that's an important thing for people to understand, that there is a biochemical phenomenon taking place, and when people kind of just get how this dopamine system works, then they can start to understand, okay, well, I might need to reset or reboot the brain's chemistry set, because if I keep doing this, it's only going to go down and down and down. And we know, like with everything, it takes more of that thing to get to the same set point that the person was at before, because their brain chemistry is the dopamine receptor sites are actually getting worn out. they're getting blunted, and that creates all kinds of issues, not to mention emotional instability. And of course, that's what we're seeing so much in our world. And like when you take this thing, this little device, this smartphone, which has literally made people dumber, and you go on Facebook, you go on Instagram, and it's like you're getting these micro dopamine hits, right? Whether it's like scrolling through Facebook, it's oh, someone liked my post, right? Oh, someone's commenting. Those things are major dopamine triggers, but we don't realize it. People just think that they feel good, or they're basically it's a distraction, right? We distract ourselves from the present moment and feeling the human experience. So I need to kind of like, I need to numb myself. I need to whatever, mindlessly, aimlessly um go into whatever piece of information. And that's all good, by the way. Like, there's the fine line is that it's presence, right? Being present in the moment and having the ability to create space between the thought of something and carrying it out, right? Like actually being able to be intentional. That's the fine line. And when it comes to the smart devices, what I recommend for people to do, if you feel like you're getting caught up in this thing, or it's taking up psychic real estate in your mind, delete the apps from your phone. Just delete the apps from your phone, because if you need to go on it, or you want to go on it, you have to go through the couple steps of reinstalling it, and then boom, boom, boom. Okay, I'm back. And it's like, so it creates more of an intentionality. For me, it creates a dynamic where I'm only going to go on for a specific reason, because these are tools. Like, all of this stuff is just tools. So are we using the tool, or is it using us? That's the first step to unplugging from any kind of habit or addiction that we feel kind of tethered to. We got to break that pattern, because otherwise the tool is going to use us, and that just creates a whole sad state of affairs.
So this dopamine hit. It's really an artificial hit. I think I heard you talking about that, as opposed to you go for a walk in the woods and you're getting like dopamine release then, but it's like you don't feel drained afterwards. But you're on Facebook and you're scrolling, and it's like these hits, and you feel very drained of energy. So like,
Yeah.
what's the difference there between these artificial dopamine hits and just like being in nature, or being in community, or hugging people, or those natural things?
That's a really good question. So there's a big difference. So first of all, so dopamine, if we look at dopamine as kind of this, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with dopamine. It's essential for your chemistry set. We need healthy amounts of dopamine, but we also need to keep it in balance with the rest of our chemistry set, particularly serotonin. So an easy way to understand this is that serotonin is all about being in the moment. It's about being content in the moment. That's why when people do things like MDMA assisted psychotherapy, or just MDMA in general, they get a flooding of serotonergic chemistry, and they feel so in the moment. Their heart is open, right? And the mind is just working functionally. It's like there's like a clarity field that people pop into, and the thoughts are streaming and they're in the moment, right? So serotonin is all about being in the moment, and dopamine is all about, well, it's not all about this, but part of it, the hyper dopamine stimuli usually projects us into a future event because we don't want to be here. So that's really the addiction phenomenon. Like an addiction is really always about chasing something outside of us, chasing something outside of the present moment. And so the difference there is that, you know, when you're in nature, well, first of all, nature doesn't want anything of you, right? There's no codependent dynamic there. Like nature is just this omnipresent, like giving. It's just this, it doesn't need or want anything. There's nothing manipulative about it. There's no agenda. And aside from that, we're just designed to plug into nature naturally. Like that's part of our own genetics. That's part of our healing. Like our body, the inflammation, for example, when we're in nature, our blood oxygen levels are much higher. We tend to be more in the right brain versus the left analytical brain, or maybe the brain hemispheres are more balanced. We just feel better. It's stress reducing, and it's also inflammation reducing based on the research of earthing. You know, getting barefoot or bare skin connected to the earth for at least 45 minutes up to 90 minutes. The research has shown that it's one of the most, if not the most powerful anti-inflammatory that anybody can do. So it's all that, right? We're the simple answers. We're just designed to be connected to nature, be surrounded by nature, to be involved in nature because it's part of our nature. And I think we've lost touch with our nature. And so you have a lot of people running around in city. I always found this so funny when I was studying diets, and I started to notice like all these people talking about what the most natural diet was and arguing about it. No, my diet's more natural and it's this or that. And I realized like really most of these people are in cities. They've grown up in cities, they've been raised in cities, and they're arguing about what's most natural. How many of these people actually know anything about nature? Right? You know, it's if for example, like the vegan concept started to break down for me, not the lifestyle entirely, but the concept of it, because I just saw so many people that were so mental and just kind of almost borderline aggressive and really try to get like very traumatizing, which made sense to me. I was like, yeah, it would make sense because we can empathize with the suffering of animals that are captive in a factory farm, for example, or mistreated. Like that's the worst thing ever. Like I can't, because it's pure like sentient innocence, and there's an obvious conflict there, and it's worth exploring. But the point I'm trying to make is I just saw a lot of people that had a similar type of trauma that never got resolved, and so it got projected onto other humans, and kind of just kept this thing going versus actually going to nature, right? Connecting with a permaculture farm, seeing how different farming practices are done, like biodynamic farming, organic farming, you know, permaculture. Like when I went to Hawaii, that kind of opened my mind up a lot. When I got out of LA and I booked it to Hawaii and I lived on a permaculture farm for about 3 months, my whole world opened up. I was like, oh my God, this is actually what happens. This is actually what it takes to grow good food. Like there's a whole process here. Um, aside from just going to the supermarket and just picking up like all our fruits and veggies and nuts and seeds. And it's like if people actually knew what it took to produce cashews, for example, people would be blown away. They wouldn't even be able to believe it, you know? So that piece right there is important for people to actually have a direct connection with their food. And it'll help them break down some of the mentalized identities or programs that are based on a lack of understanding of that particular process, for example. And I think it'll help people see that it's not just black and white, right? That was a big thing for me when I realized this isn't black or white. It's not yes or no or one way or the other. The challenge that we're in is we've just lost our way altogether. And we're trying to adapt to a very abstract situation that we're not genetically or psychologically designed for. And all of us has some kind of anxiety or some kind of restlessness, some kind of feeling like there's something wrong, but we've all adapted to it. And and that's part of the healing, right? The healing, that primordial kind of wound or trauma that has been passed on epigenetically through the generations, of us just progressively losing our way from humanity or losing our way from nature. And so there's no way out of it for us. Like, we have to take it upon ourselves to take steps to get back into nature, even if that's just going to a park, meditating under a tree. Just lay down, just take your shirt off and just lay down in the park and just kind of let everything, just let the stress go. Whatever the thoughts are, the argument you got into with your spouse or whatever, like, just go move, go walk in the park, go walk on a trail, whatever you have available to you. And also put nature into your body. That's the other piece, right? Because if we're just eating junk food and processed food, that processed food has a particular energetic signature to it because it comes from greed. It comes from a form of manipulation or something that's abhorrent to our nature, and it numbs us and it deactivates our well, our psychic abilities for one, but it deactivates our sensation, so we're not able to sense what's going on within us and what's going on without us or outside of us. So that's the that's the two-part piece right there, is getting connected to nature and then getting nature back into our bodies.
Just to jump in there, Ronnie, to add to what you were saying, when I was in Thailand in 2015, we were looking at the you can go and walk and pet the tigers, right? And I was like going, man, this isn't right. And then there was a lady that was organising the trip, was talking to me about it, and I said, yeah, it's amazing that you can get wild animals. And she said, oh yeah, well, what we do, well, not what we do, what they do is they feed them cooked meat. So what they do is they have to cook the meat, get this, 30 miles away from the tigers.
Whoa.
And then they bring the cooked meat into the tigers because it makes them docile enough for humans to be able to interact with them.
Whoa.
So that's what you're talking about, isn't it? And I was like, I said to my partner, did you just get that? Did you just hear what that lady just said? And she was like, just I think she said something like, just tell me again. Right, what they do is they get raw meat, they take it 30 miles away from the tiger, they cook it, they feed it to the tigers to numb them so people can pet them. And she's like, no way. So yeah, so that's what you're talking about, right?
That's a dude. That's first of all, that's outrageous. I had no idea about that, and that's exactly right. Yeah, manipulating our food supply in a way that turns us docile and makes us domesticated. That's basically what's happened to us, right? As a human civilization, is that we have been domesticated progressively. Our genetics have been like deactivated or even weeded out through some kind of eugenics program. Yeah. And has progressively made us less and less of who we are.
It's turned us from being human into being people.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, interesting. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the different things that we do to numb down, and like the example of the angry vegans, and it's this interesting concept of just like how in head they are, and it's just like everybody else is wrong. But we're seeing that more and more today, like with this extremism and this extreme leftism of like, yes. They're so stuck in their heads. And it's like, everyone else is wrong. I don't want to hear anything else. I'm going to censor everything and block everything. And it's like, there's no compassion. There's no heart. It's just all head. It's just, and it's crazy. And there's that cycle, and you can see the pain of what they're going through, and they're just like the extreme pain that they're in, and it's just more things to numb it down. It's like, okay, shut up, I don't want to hear that. I got to stay in this box, in this bubble. I'm gonna numb it down with junk food and social media, and it's just like, yeah.
And then they create an echo chamber, right? Like whether it's the vegan community or it's the democratic community or the whatever the things are. These little subsets of little communities and tribes that people create, particularly on the internet. It's basically creating a psychic echo chamber where people only see what they want to see and what confirms their current belief system. And so that's been used against us. That's just psychological warfare. That's MK Ultra mind control. Like that has literally been put upon us as a very sophisticated mind control project, if you will. And so what's happening? Our brains are basically being hijacked by these different initiatives or agendas or technologies, and it's creating some kind of psychic stranglehold, some kind of compression. And I understand it as an observer. I understand it as someone who's broken through a lot of my conditioning, but I never had it like that. There was nothing in me that was so fundamental, that was so like a zealot about anything, that caused me to, basically attack people. I just that particular piece was very alarming for me to see and to witness. So that caused me to study psychology much more deeply, as I realized so many of the health problems that people are going through, are psychological in nature. They're psychosomatic, right? Psycho-emotional. And so the body just responds to the internal process that's happening within the human being. But they don't make the connection, and Western medicine sure doesn't teach us about that. It's outside in versus inside out. And so if anything's going wrong with the body, it's cut, burn, poison, or we have no idea what's going on. It's like, oh yeah, like I have all these problems, these aches and pains, this chronic issue. I got this thing bulging from my chest or whatever. Or I just, I feel like totally, just something is completely wrong. And then they do the scan or whatever, and like, nope, we didn't find anything. You seem healthy, and yet this person is suffering every day of their life. And so now there's what's beautiful is that there's like a renaissance phenomenon that's been happening in our world for the last decade or 2 decades because of the internet, by the way. Like the internet has been the tool of freedom of information. So let's remember that, like, the internet is the most powerful tool that we've had, the decentralized internet. And if they knew what would have happened and how people would have been able to awaken so quickly, they probably wouldn't have let the cat out of the box, but they did, and we got a hold of it. So we just get to now be more intentional with it. Like, for example, okay, I'm going to go to I got my GPS. Where's the nearest spring, right? Like, where's the nearest source of water that I can find, and then go take my family on a trip or something, and go for a hike and go to a park, get into some water, go procure some water and drink spring water. Like, where's the nearest farmer market? Like, that's a great use of technology, right? To give us direction, but we can't allow ourselves to get knocked out of the cockpit of our own life, right? That's the fine line, is staying in the cockpit of my own life, of my own body, like making decisions for myself, not letting some artificial algorithm on the internet decide what I'm going to look at or where my attention's going to go. And that's the big challenge that we find ourselves in. And it all does come down to dopamine, because the less resilient somebody is, and the more worn out their dopamine receptors are, which also translates into the adrenal and the kidneys, because dopamine is a big factor in adrenal health. And so we see people that are totally wiped out and adrenally fatigued. And the less resilient somebody is, the more prone they are to compensation strategies to compensate for their weakness. And so, but it creates this addictive cycle, you know. So we have to remember that, and that just really brings it back to what we talked about before. Is like, you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself, because if you're not resilient, you are susceptible to these algorithmic patterns, and then it can become a full-blown addiction before you even know it. And now you just dug yourself a hole so deep that you have to climb your way out of it, and the government ain't going to do it for you. And so that's where the dopamine reset comes back in, is just taking full responsibility and going through the withdrawal process, right? feeling your feelings, feeling the itch to do the thing. Just feel it, and then change the habit. Like instead of that, I'm going to meditate. Instead of that, I'm going to lift some weights, right? I'm going to get that adrenaline hit. I'm going to get that surge of energy from something else, something that actually helps me long term. That's really the simplicity of it. It's like just the ability to change your attention from one thing onto another. And again, feeling your feel. I'm going to say this over and over. This is the biggest problem we have in our world is people don't want to feel. Um, and we have to feel. We have to, first of all, we have to feel what's happened to our planet. We have to feel what's happened to the animals, right? We have to feel what's happened to children. We have to feel what's happened to the little child inside of us. If we got a little boy or girl inside of us that never got the love or the attention that they needed, that creates a micro trauma, and that needs to be attended to. Otherwise, the child will come out in adult conversations or adult dynamics, and that I feel like that's the internal pain that so many people are going through, especially so many men in this world, that have been addicted to pornography and all these ways to get out of feeling, because maybe feelings are weak or emotions are weak or crying's for little boys or whatever those stories we got that have just railroaded our development. But here's the beautiful thing. We as human beings are so adaptable and so versatile, and our brains are neuroplastic, which means that they can adapt and change and remold themselves based on new information, new movement patterns, new health patterns, new nutritional information. Literally anything that we invest our time into will start to change the neurocircuitry in the neural pathways. And it's just about repeating the pattern. It's just do it again. Okay, do it again. It gets a little easier. Okay, I feel bad. Okay, great. I'm building momentum. Oh, okay, cool. That's the brain starting to transfer its dopamine stimulate or its dopamine circuitry from getting that little drug hit, that little quick hit, that little temporary gratification. And then, okay, maybe I actually feel better when I delay gratification, right? When I go to the gym and I put myself through a workout that was hard and I push through just a little bit, I break through just a little bit of that discomfort, all of a sudden the brain starts to entrain itself and actually derives pleasure from doing things that are hard, right? And we know that, especially as men, we're designed to do things that are hard. Like it's just built into us, and we feel good when we do it. And there's something, I'll just mention this and then I'll take another pause. I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but I know for me, when I avoid doing hard things, I feel pain. If I'm in an avoidance pattern and I'm distracting myself with these little dopamine hits, it's a strange thing because I don't actually feel pleasure. I feel like I'm actually doing something that's hurting me versus just doing something uncomfortable in a moment, making a phone call, whatever it is I have to do that I don't want to do. And by doing the thing, I actually feel, whoa, that I actually feel really good all of a sudden, right? So I'm not sure what your thoughts about that are.
It's good. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the male energy of like needing to do things that are hard, and like looking at kind of the feminization of men because things have been made easy for us. We're in comfortable homes and everything's easy, and then connected to everything's instant gratification of like go online and you can get it and find that information and get that stimulation or the pornography or whatever. It's all instant, and you don't have to work for anything. So that's just like really weakening that masculine spirit for sure.
Yeah, that's you just I just want to just highlight what you just said real quick. Not having to work for it. It's like earning something that you didn't, it's like getting something you didn't earn. That feels very weird. There's something weird about that to me. If I didn't earn something, like, and there's also the self-sabotage thing too, right? Where it's like if you know that you didn't earn something, or maybe if things are too easy, then there's something inside of many of us, many people that will literally just create chaos just to like switch it up, right? So some people have a chaotic pattern or an addiction to chaos because things have been made so easy that something else has to come out of them to deal with, I don't know, the chaos that was just created, or for the lack of chaos, I guess.
Yeah, it's all being suppressed. Phil, you gonna say something?
Yeah, just you know, lately I always go back to the fast I did a 38-day fast, Ronnie, in at the beginning of lockdown, and the biggest takeout I got from that was about pain relief, which is really what you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding, um, you know, now what I call pain relief. You know, people think of aspirin and paracetamol and cocodamol or whatever it's called as a painkiller. But actually, you know, I was looking at that cup of tea, that sandwich, the biscuit, the not that I do any of those, but the so for me it was just I guess just realizing the habits and the patterns, and you know, and watching people really going, especially when you're fasting, it's much easier to see people's patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the painkiller, instead of going for a walk in nature as a painkiller, they'll put on a movie, they'll go on
Right.
Facebook, they'll go on Instagram, they'll get on the phone, they'll go shopping, they'll have a cup of coffee, they'll have a biscuit, a piece of cake. um, and actually all these little things become painkillers, which is kind of what you're talking about now.
Exactly
And
right.
you know, for me that was a real big takeout, just going, wow, they're painkillers. It's just so, you know, so it's so people can understand it a bit more. I'm calling it a painkiller, but it's
Mm-hmm.
actually in search of something other than now. It's in
Yes.
search of, um, I think what you're talking about, that instant gratification. It's just in search of something other than now.
Mm.
When you're fasting, I got fed up with drinking juice, so the last, well, I think for the last 30, for probably 30 days of that fast, I only drank 2 liters of juice a day. And when you're on 2 liters of juice and some herbs and a intestinal cleanse,
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
there's actually not a great deal of instant pleasure in there, apart from the fact that you
Yeah.
know you're doing something good. Because after you've drunk, I drank orange juice straight, an orange, lemon, and ginger, an apple, lemon, and ginger for 30 days.
Wow.
There ain't a lot of gratification in that, apart from the fact that you know you're doing something good. And then I went for a walk. So my painkiller became going for a walk, jumping on a rebounder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that became, and for me, that was the thing that actually it kept me moving. Um, so yeah, I'd walk. I'd either walk in the morning or walk in the evening, and bounce in the morning or bounce in the evening. So I wasn't walking far. I was only doing about a mile and bouncing for a minimum of 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, even within the bouncing, what I found is you've got to be really careful on that rebounder what you're creating, because it does show up. There's
Oh,
that
interesting.
there's that
Well,
thing about 0 point. When you bounce, you hit 0 point. And in that moment, what I realized is that's the moment of creation.
Interesting.
well, what I really love about your experience, Phil, and you can talk to this, it ties into what Ronnie just said about the inner child experience. So as you took away all of those painkillers, maybe that you can talk to what happened to you in your inner child
Yeah, so
experience.
on about day 30, I was gonna go for 40 days. And then after about day 36, I thought I'm just gonna keep going. And then all of a sudden I started to get heart palpitations. And I was like, "Ooh, this is a bit scary." Day 36, I got more heart palpitations. Day 37, I got even more. Day 38, I just wanted to scream. It was like, and really, really fast. And I was like, oh my God. If I was a normal person, I'd phone the ambulance and get rushed straight into the medical room. And I thought, but they're just going to tell me what I know, which is I've got heart palpitations. And it's really not very good, right? So they tell me exactly what I know. And I thought, well, I don't need a diagnosis of what I know, because I know that I've got it. And I know that actually I really need to stop doing what I'm doing for whatever reason. And then I felt all this energy, like I just wanted to start bashing my arms and screaming. And I was like, wow, this is okay, this is really interesting. So I put my hands on my chest and breathed into my heart and went, okay, so what is in my heart that I need to know? What
Mm.
is it in me that you're telling me? Who wants to come forwards? Who wants to speak to me? What's going on? And this young aspect of myself came to me really strongly and was like, Phil, man, I'm so unhappy.
Wow.
And I was like, why? And he said, you locked me in a dark room on my own with nothing, and you left me there for 42 years. And I'm really pissed off.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, okay. So what do we do with this? Where do you need to go? What can I do? And he's like, okay, I want to take you somewhere. So I said, okay, you take me. So he took me to I can feel the,
I'm
the
shivering now.
now. So he took me up into the woods to this favorite place he was. And I was like, okay, Phil, well, what do you need to do? And he lay on the ground and he just bashed the ground and screamed and screamed and bashed and screamed. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that was in there.
Mm.
And then he started crying, and with that I started crying. So I'm sat in this chair where I am now, the tears pouring down my face, going, okay, so this is real, because I'm actually experiencing this now as an adult with my child's self.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done, I don't know if you know EFT and do you know EFT, Ronnie?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you know matrix re-imprinting?
I don't know that.
So what happens with EFT, you tap on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
With matrix re-imprinting, you go into the matrix. So you take your consciousness from yourself into your inner child, and then you tap on your inner child in that picture.
Oh wow.
So then you tap on your inner child in the picture whilst talking to him as your future self. And then you say, look, I'm your future self, and I've come to share with you, hold this space, keep you safe, so you can express to me whatever it is that you need to say.
Mm-hmm.
And he was basically really upset the day that my dad and my granddad had said, you can't be a gamekeeper, you're not going to do that. We don't want you to do that. We don't want you to go into that. You need to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the day that little aspect of me died and went into that room. Whether he shut the door or whether I shut the door, I wouldn't actually like to say. Feeling into it now, he went in that room and he slammed the door shut tight and was like, man, you're not looking after me. So, what do I do?
Wow.
So the door was slammed shut. And that trauma, which you said was a micro trauma, I would actually suggest that's actually a macro trauma to that child.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So even though me now, well, I experienced that that trauma. I experienced that trauma the same level that 8-year-old or 6-year-old self. And thank God I had those tools, because what would have happened to me physically if I hadn't have had those tools? Because it was a really big experience, and the physical, no, and even still, Ronnie, now, if I'm not careful, I can, if I get my diet a bit wrong, or I get terrible heart palpitations. But what I found is I could go in myself and take a level of energy off, but I haven't been able to go in really deeper and clear it. And my experience is, this isn't the same for everybody, but the majority of us, it's really hard to clear with the same energy that created it.
Right. Hmm.
And that's and so that's the challenge. And the other challenge is, of course, is getting to work with someone that's done that depth of work.
Right. Yeah. Right. Hmm. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. And that speaks to so many different things. And yeah, so from the experience of a child, whether it's hearing their parents argue or whatever, like in that situation, like yeah, it is a macro trauma to a child. And what happens, especially the younger the child, their nervous system and brain hasn't developed to the degree that they can effectively process it, let alone having any awareness that that's happening. Like an animal, for example, they go through something called neurogenic tremoring, right? So if they're attacked by an animal, they get away, boom, they're off to safety. They shake all that stress chemistry out of their body, and then they're good. They're not carrying their trauma with them and all that, right? And becoming fearful or weird. They're it's amazing. They just shake it all off and go back about what they're doing. But we as humans do the opposite. We carry all that stored trauma with us, all the stress fractures with us. And I think that's where the split happens, right? Like so Dr. Gabor Mate says that all addiction is a seeking for connection, or trauma is actually, it's not the event that happened or the story about it, it's the impact it had on us, and it created a disconnect.
Yeah.
Right, so that disconnect never got reconnected fully, and so we have like this inner split inside of us. And I think that's what you so beautifully alluded to.
Yeah. So just to bring you onto that as well now, in England there was a practitioner that I met once, and she was trained in Native American bodywork. And unfortunately, she wasn't teaching anymore because I said, "Are you doing it?" She said, "Like, no, I've stopped teaching now." So the Native Americans used to do body work for up to 18 hours on the battlefield after they'd been into battle, so they didn't take it back to their camp.
Wow.
Which is basically what you're talking about where the animals shake. They would work on each other until the trauma of the battle was gone and they didn't take it back to their camp.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that just brings up so many things, but just simplistic wise, like for all of us, everyone that's listening, just that understanding that like this is, and that also brings in like the touch therapy, right? There's the nature therapy, but we could easily isolate ourselves in nature, and the whole thing is about, it's not about isolation, it's about connection. And so
Yeah.
the other piece of this whole like human embodiment, like connecting to our own humanity, is also part of connecting to one another, right? Human interaction. That's also this whole six distancing from everyone and the mask, and like it creates this weird pattern where people are becoming more aggressive or more neurotic. um in some cases, yeah, I'm sure like in the cities of like LA and New York, it's way crazier than over here. I see it a little bit over here, but most people are a little more commonsensical, and they're just going about their business. But even then, you can see with the people that are bought into the mask situation, and they have it in their cars and everything, and they're obviously being run by fear and paranoia, and that creates a type of attitude that is it's anything other than like loving or compassionate or healing. So it's just very stressful. It's just a very stressful type of energy to be around or to witness. And that's the challenge. And so people isolate from other people because we're supposed to be afraid of other people. And if we care about people, we're supposed to distance ourselves from the people we care about. And that's what we're told. And so that also creates the social isolation picture, which a lot of people are suffering from, just as important as getting into nature. Now, how about this? Why don't we as people get into nature together,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Well, actually, Ronnie, now you just said that I volunteered just down the road, and my project I've set up. One project I created was a Christmas fair, and I my whole point of me setting it up was I set it up 2 weeks before Christmas. So we were the last Christmas market basically on the circuit. Everyone else packs up. So how can it be a Christmas market if it's not near Christmas, right? So I set this market up so it would run 2 weeks before Christmas, and we had roasted chestnuts, an open fire, a Christmas tree. We had stalls, and the guys that I volunteered for, I made them open. Well, I didn't make them. I just suggested that they open it all up for free. Because, but they said, yeah, but that won't make us any money, Phil. I said, no, it won't make you any money. However, more people will know about what you're doing, and it will create future clients for you because you're involving people. Right. So my whole thing there was to create a community. It wasn't about stalls. It wasn't about making money. My vision was about community and bringing people together so they could remember what Christmas was all about. And it ended up being the #1 revenue event of the year. But that wasn't my aim. But that was the side effect of creating community and people coming together. Oh, we had carol singers around the fire as well in the dark. So, and then
Brilliant.
People didn't kind of get that, so I got a bit tired of trying to pull it all together because their focus was on making money and making it work. And it's like, guys, you've lost the whole ethos of what I'm bringing, which is bringing people together. That's the ethos of it. And then the other thing I did for getting people into nature was I created a woodland restoration project. And then we used to go into the woods on a Sunday and clear all the brambles and all the dead trees and create a coppice. And then what was amazing from creating the coppicing, which looks like you've decimated in the beginning, but of course all these flowers and animals and birds come back that haven't been there for decades. And then slowly it rejuvenates and all these different plants and trees and everything come back through. So that was another way of getting people in a group in nature.
That's brilliant. If you notice, like some of the best companies or brands, they have a culture. Like there's a working culture of people within the business or whatever it is. There's a cultural attitude, right, of people that are synced up together, and that I think that's so important. That just speaks to the obviousness of this, which is we need each other. We need human connection. We need to be able to dialogue and talk to each other outside of just this virtual interface. I mean, it's great that we can connect on this, but this is also, we can see each other's eyes, right? We can see each other's mannerisms. There's an actual human interaction happening. And then, there's the human touch element. Like we need like body work. This is why great body work is so important. It's not just about working out the tense muscles. It's having somebody else's healing energy on us, which allows the body and the nervous system to down regulate, because we don't have to hold it all, right? It's like, oh, I have permission to just let it go, and this person is going to take care of this moment for me. That's a huge, that's how the best body work is done. It's a transference of energy. Or even if people, with Reiki or whatever, I've seen different situations where I've seen things move out of people. I actually saw it the other night. Something moved out of one of our friends, just like some anger, some whatever it was. And all we were doing is just like one hand on one of his, like his legs, or someone else's hand on another part. And then the other hand just beaming out energy, just like having like loving intention, just holding space, witnessing, being witnessed. All that together creates an access point for healing to happen. And when we just isolate ourselves, we become neurotic. We become these weird paranoid creatures in the dark. And I think so we're seeing kind of an interesting divide in the world right now between the swamp creatures and people that are moving back to their humanity.
Become like golems, right? Precious, my precious.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was talking. I was Phil and I had a little chat the other day about things, and basically, we are human beings. We're not people. You're a person. Your straw man or your birth certificate creates a person, which is a persona. Then we become people, which belong to the state. So you can't be a sovereign being whilst being a person.
Yeah, good point.
You can only be a sovereign being if you're a human.
So a person, so then, okay, so a person is basically a corporation, a corporation. That's
Yeah,
what it
that's so
basically
they
means.
so they create a person in order to do commerce with us. So they
Wow.
do commerce with our person, not with our human self.
Wow, like just think about that. That's the first traumatic experience that happens to a baby. And like you were saying, Phil, your parents give you up. So you come through and the parents go, they're not knowingly, but they give you up to this to the state. Like wow.
So to register a birth, Ronnie, register in a Black's dictionary actually means to give up ownership of.
Right, right,
And that's when you become a person.
right. Okay, and so in the birth certificates, my understanding is that there's a duplication made that's basically like it's a counterfeit, and it's basically sold on the stock market, and there's all kinds of crazy things that go on to make money off each person's birth bond. And same thing's happening with their death certificate, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's like it's all ownership. Like we own, this is not even a human being. This is a person. It's a registered person that we can trade and sell back and forth on the New York Stock Exchange.
That's that's the size of it. So when you were talking earlier about humanity, that's what we've lost is the fact that we're human beings having a human experience, and we've been conditioned into thinking that we're people,
Right.
and
Right.
that we are individual persons.
That's gonna take a good integration for all of us in terms of how we use language. One of them I began to start readjusting was this word understanding,
Yes.
right? Stand under some form of authority. Yeah, do I understand me? Yeah, I understand you. Yeah, I'm standing under you. Wait a minute. No, actually not. So changing that to understanding, like, do I understand? Oh yeah, I understand, but I'm not going to stand under somebody else.
Yeah, thanks for that reminding, Ronnie, because that's yeah,
That's a
it's like
such a sneaky one.
yeah, and the same as the word trying, isn't it?
Uh
You
huh.
can't
Yeah.
try.
What are you
You
gonna
either
do?
do it, you
Try.
do or you don't. It's really simple.
Yeah, like, I'm just gonna go and try to. Yeah, that's man. Wow. Yeah, it's such a schism break. It's such a like such a pattern break, like how obvious it is, but even when you realize it, it's almost like there's really nothing you can really say other than like, wow, that's it. Just takes a moment for the mind to kind of like readjust its patterning.
That takes some practicing, I can tell you.
Right.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
inner stand, thank you. That's my number one takeaway tonight. Apart from
Yeah,
lots of other
yeah.
things, but that's the one that really just got. So we got to practice that, Phil.
Yep,
Inner standing, bro. That's what we've got to do.
I understand.
Get that
And,
going on.
yeah, and then if it's like really clear, sometimes you might say like, oh dude, I overstand. Like I overstand that one for sure.
Oh wow,
That's the next level.
yeah. Oh, so we were talking actually, Ronnie. Now we kind of come to this subject about getting someone on that really understands about the
Understands.
person. Yeah, that really understands about the person and the human and all those contracts. Because that
Mm,
would be a very interesting one to talk about.
Yeah, all about
absolutely.
a whole sovereignty episode. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely encourage you guys to do that. I mean, I feel like that's been my whole motivation over these last 7, 8 months, whatever it's been since March, has really been this primal activation of sovereignty and understanding how we've lost our sovereignty. We've unconsciously given it away and been contractually bound to these unlawful contracts that we didn't even realize that we were signed over to, and this kind of spell has been played upon us. And I think sovereignty definitely feels like the theme of the hour. right now on planet Earth. Like people are like, and that's the revolution, right? And I think that's part of like the Trump revolution is like Trump's driving the truck. He's not any savior or whatever. He's just like driving the trunk. Like we're driving through this thing, and then there's just millions of people following that movement that are waking up, and that's been the most amazing thing to watch for me, is just to see people like rebelling in peaceful ways. The only people that are not rebelling in peaceful ways are the people that are telling you to stay in your home and talking
Yeah.
about peaceful protests, but their version of a protest looks a lot like a riot to me. I don't know, maybe I'm not seeing something. But all the people that are actually revolting consciously are actually doing it in a way that's peaceful, but it's non-compliant, right? I'm not complying with tyranny, and I'm going to show up powerfully. I'm going to speak my truth, and I'm also going to do it in a way that doesn't threaten other people's welfare.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what, you know, we're seeing that in England, in London, Bristol, Liverpool.
Mm.
You know, my way of revolting is, you know, I'm drinking my juice.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm doing the inner work. We've got a show on. I'm working when I can. Do you know what I mean? I'm doing my best. Someone once said you can tell when you've got a sad life because lockdown doesn't affect you much.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
you know, you probably find it the same as Phil and I, Ronnie, when you know, once you get onto a really high vibrational diet and lifestyle, the only place you can go is in nature. Lockdown doesn't stop. You know, if you're going to exercise, lockdown doesn't stop that anyway.
That's right.
I
Yeah,
don't go
right.
to restaurants. I don't go down the pub. I don't go to the cinema.
So
I go
true.
shopping if I have to.
Yeah.
Just like, and people say to me, "Isn't it dreadful?" It's like, well, it hasn't actually
It's actually
changed much for me
nice.
because I can still go down the woods. I can still, you know, actually it's changed a lot because Phil and I have created this show, right? And we get to hang out with amazing people like you on a Sunday night all around the world,
So
sharing
good.
great information. So on a level, yes, it's changed a lot for me, but it's been brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
That's brilliant. And
so that's our rebellion is
yeah,
doing the work.
doing the work, yeah, not being distracted, doing the things that they don't want us to do, which is not really like, oh, they don't want us to go to movies. They would love for us to go to movies. They've loved that.
Yeah,
They actually don't want us to awaken. They don't
yeah,
want us to evolve. And so the real rebellion is actually just taking care of ourselves, evolving, doing the inner work, investing in ourselves, investing in our communities, our families. It's a weird I don't necessarily have the words, but it's a weird inversion. Right? It's like inversion logic, and it's like every time they try to push the agenda, it's like it has a boomerang effect, or it has like a rebound effect. Like, but there's certain it's like dependent on people. The people, there's a certain population of people that are going to go deeper into the program, and then there's more and more and more people that are just popcorning and waking up, and they're just going against it. They're doing the exact opposite of what they're told. And now it's reached a critical mass point, right? Like it doesn't even matter now how many people who aren't quote unquote awake, they will be. They won't have a choice because it's only the movie that we're watching is only going to get more ridiculous and more obvious in all of its iterations, to the point where people will not be able to stay asleep. Like the program is going through a controlled demolition. The media is going through a controlled demolition process. They've already created credibility suicide a long time ago, but more so now with the election and all the fraud and the lawsuits and all the evidence that's just overwhelming coming out about the whole thing. And I'd love everyone to know where I think the show, because this is a show, this is a total movie, it's totally scripted, it's obviously scripted. Like you couldn't make this stuff up unless you did. And I kind of feel like you would have to actually make it up because it's playing out like there's like this is going somewhere. This has been going somewhere. It's not random things. And I think where the TV show's going now is it's going to turn into like the reality like courtroom TV shows that we had, you know, like the Judge Judy's, and we had all these different things and the sitcoms and stuff. I think that's where it's going. It's going to go very soon into reality courtroom television, and the people that have been behind this deception are going to be the same people that are tried right in front of us, and all the evidence is laid out in front of them, and that's going to be disclosure coming through a timeline, a movie timeline that we're on. That's my basic. I could unpack that a little bit more, but that's just my basic working theory on what's going on and where this is headed, because it's going to have to, especially before January 20th, because nothing happens technically until January 20th when it comes to the presidency. And the fact that the media came out and just basically said, oh, Joe Biden's the president-elect, and then they changed as the projected winner and all this. It's like, wow, this is just the craziest movie. And the thing about lying is that you have to keep lying in order to keep the lie going. Otherwise, people would know that you lied to them. Yep. If you change the narrative now. So they got to keep the COVID narrative going. They got to keep the lockdown narrative going. They got to keep the this election fraud going, because otherwise people are going to find out that they've lied to them. And the weird thing about it is that it's like the snowball has so much momentum that it's going to go there anyways. Like, it's actually unavoidable. So it's like a parasite, right? Like, the parasite just keeps on doing what the parasite does, even to its own elimination. It's not actually very intelligent. It's just manipulative. But it's not really intelligent the way that, like, you or I might think about, like, you know, consequences. Like, okay, well, if I keep doing this logically, it's going to end up here. So maybe I should pull out and maybe I should like change my approach. A parasite doesn't have that. It just has, it's like one direction.
Shut the fuck up and stop being a fucking faggot.
Oh, what's that? Who's that? Who was that?
Don't know, but we just had someone jump in there, didn't we?
That was weird.
I have no idea who that was.
All right, we're good. We're all muted.
No,
So,
we're
hey,
not. You fucking retarded nigger. You're a stupid nigger. How about you shut the fuck up?
Who is this? Let's see. I'm gonna remove this person right now.
It's no one on our thing, Phil.
Now we got some secret agent just jumped in here.
No, I removed him.
What was that? Whoa, what was that about?
That was weird.
I just let in someone called David Winley.
I just kicked him out. So
Is that it's oh okay.
So that was weird. So anyway, so I'm just gonna move. No, I don't know who it was.
It clearly wasn't David Winley, was it?
Whoa.
Oh, sorry about that, guys.
We're touching on some truths here. So I was just kind of tapping into like this movement of the Trump supporters, and like the media and everything's made it about Trump, which, you know, partially it is, but then it's not. So yesterday I go down in the Capitol. There's a Stop the Steal rally, and I'm there with my like the virus. There's no virus, like with my free hug shirt on, and it's like there's only like 5% of the people wearing masks. They're all gathered together, but really they're talking about freedom. They're talking about sovereignty, and they're not like obsessed with like Trump is our savior. They're like, no, God is our savior, and I'm about freedom. And you know, like Trump's just this, you know, he's the the president guy, but we're about freedom. And it's like it's such beautiful. I got like 50, 60 hugs, no fear, like lots of smiles. People like, right on, yeah, there's no virus. Like the whole PCR test, like they got it, they're getting it, and like these people really are awake. And like, yeah, it was really good to see that. But yeah, the media puts on these people all these labels about they're evil and just
yeah,
they're racist and all of these things. It's like these people, like there was like China, like this guy from China who immigrated. There was Native American people. just like all cultures were there in that circle, and it was beautiful, you know.
Yeah, it
you, well,
definitely
you
seems
really,
to be.
you really, that's
It
it.
definitely seems to be a movement for truth, doesn't it? I mean, that's for me.
Yes.
I'm a truth seeker.
Yes.
Other people are going to call me a conspiracy theorist, but actually, I don't bother with that anymore. I'm a truth seeker, and I'm seeking for the truth, and that's what we. And that it seems like lots of people that follow Trump are actually truth seekers. It's not Trump's going to save everybody.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, that's what happened to me too. Like I wasn't into Trump. Like it's just where the truth led me. It just led me to discover things I didn't realize before, and to find out things about him, and aligned like military initiatives that have been aligned throughout multiple countries, including our own, and that had been connected to Donald Trump. But he's really, I just look at him like he's the truck driver. He's the only person that has such an ego structure that's big enough and strong enough to just power through the media industrial complex and all the things that one would have to go through to break down the structure. And then it just has the power of the people that just resonate with it. It just resonate with what he's saying, and the movement that's really being created and that he was recruited for. He's really just that character in our culture that just has what it takes to stand on the front lines. And then it's everyone else that like you said, that are just seeking the truth, seeking sovereignty, seeking liberation, that are waking up out of the dream spell, and are actually taking on like real patriotism. Like that's actually that spirit of patriotism, which I don't definitely don't remember that being a thing any time in my life, is like, it's like come out full on. And I don't know, it's just a beautiful thing to watch. It's really a miracle.
Yeah, well, I mean, what is patriotism really? It's like, it's community, it's family, it's like it's togetherness. Like that's it. It's not like, oh, my country is the best and we're gonna, kill the
Yeah,
other countries. It's like, no, it's like, this is my family and these are my people. That's it. It's simple.
I
totally.
guess on the internet sensation, it's like tribe, isn't it?
Right.
Try.
It's like
Mhm.
it's creating a tribe, isn't it? And that's
Yeah.
we've actually lost our natural ancestral tribes, and we're looking for another tribe. And what this is doing, I think, is creating. Me and Phil didn't know we were going to start to create a tribe. We just started a show, but actually, clearly, um, what's the word I'm looking for? We are drawing people of the same. An English expression is people of the same ilk,
Right. Right. Hmm.
and that seems to be clear about the people that we're drawing in.
That's it, man. That's exactly what we're all doing. That's what we're all drawn to. And that's the beauty of the technology, as long as we use it correctly. And then we can use our dopamine system as a way to reinforce positive habits and productive things that are actually leading somewhere, versus aimless scrolling or aimless searching, and not having a goal, not knowing where we're going. I think that's also key, is you got to kind of know where you're going in order to get there. And
Yeah,
any road, and if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there too. So I think we've lost kind of intentionality. We've just gotten distracted and scattered and stressed so much that we need to readapt our brains to focusing on one thing at a time, and having something to focus on long enough that it actually takes us somewhere.
yeah, that's brilliant. And I think that you know, for me, Ronnie, that thing about what you're saying about not having a focus, being lost. When you're kind of pulled away from your, because my roots were very strong, but when you've been pulled away from your roots and pulled it away from your kind of tribe, you just there's a feeling of being lost. And I kind of, in this last, I guess really since lockdown and the fast and everything, it's really made me more resonate more with native people that have lost their way, well, they've
Yeah.
been forced off their way, which, you know. And then I realized that if you look at us in England and people don't think about this, is what happened to our people? What happened to our native people? Exactly the same thing as what happened to Native Americans, the Aborigines, the Africans. Exactly the same thing, but it's been eradicated out of history. No one talks about when the Britons were annihilated. No one talks about when our people, when the white man's, when the white people lost their way, when we lost our tribes, when we lost our land, when we lost our people. No one talks about that.
Yeah.
And actually, I think we all need to remember that actually we had a tribe, we had a way of life. We were native people, and you know, for us, it's been so long ago that people have got no clue. It's the Celts, it's the Britons, it's someone else. They can all do that, but what they haven't done is brought it home and gone, that's my people. We've lost our connection with land. We've been annihilated just the same. I tell you what brought it on. It's an American series called okay, I'll kill me for forgetting this. Called Outlander. Have you seen it, Ronnie?
I haven't seen it. I think I've heard of it.
It's a really great series. So it starts off basically, it's all about time travel and shifting and history. And it basically starts off back in 1740, I think it must be. And they were basically killing the last of the Highlanders.
Wow.
So the English army was on its march to rid the earth of, you know, and it's just like, wow, they were our last native people, the Highlanders. And they just got butchered. It was that actually really got me connected to that pain of loss of our people. And it's like, wow, no wonder I feel so disconnected and scattered and lost. It's really interesting.
That's the story of that's the human story.
Yeah, right.
That's the human story right there. Yeah. By the way, guys, how long are we going? I have to transition.
I think this is
I
think you're right on. I think it's a good time to transition. Maybe just tell us a little bit about how people can get a hold of you and your program, and and then we can close out.
Awesome. Yeah, by the way, this has been absolutely awesome, and just talking about real things here, talking about real truth. So I really appreciate it. If people want to follow me or get in contact with me, they can go to my website. It's hhphealth.com. So 2 H's, 1 P, health.com. And this upcoming program, I'll just share a quick little bit about it. It's called the Ultimate Dopamine Reset Program. It's a 5-week live coaching course. I basically take a group of people through a 5-week process. And it also has weekly group calls. So they're like 2-hour Zoom calls with the entire group. We do a lot of coaching. I go through the protocols. There is a lifestyle protocol that's built into the program as well to get people attuned to a different type of lifestyle, different forms of supplementation to help reboot their neurotransmitters, go through a withdrawal process that's made as easy and simple and smooth as possible. Because we're basically withdrawing from drugs. Like, that's the truth of the matter, is like coffee is a drug, alcohol is a drug. Like, tobacco is the chemical tobacco that our society promotes is definitely a drug. Pornography has very extreme drug-like effects on the brain, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, by the way, guess what? These things are also drugs too. The technology, or it can be a drug for sure. So what this whole thing is about helping people reset and reboot their neurochemistry and their nervous system, because ultimately our nervous systems have been hijacked as a human civilization. Like, all of us, and to some extent, or not in most people, in extreme ways, have been functionally dysfunctional, and have their operating system is thrown out of harmony, and they've adapted to that and normalized to it, so they don't quite recognize. Some people know for sure, they've gotten to that point where it's very obvious, but whatever it is, we all need periodic resets. And so this is a 5-week opportunity. We have about 25 people that have already signed on, so there's a certain window of spots that are available. It starts on the 20th, and we have a Facebook group support page too that everybody's in, and that's where we do a lot of communication. That's where we kind of have the tribe, and it's a private group, so it's a very very tight knit kind of thing, and it's a great thing. And that's why I love doing the group programs, because I get to get a lot of people together. I feed off the energy. We all feed off the energy together. There's dialogue. There's Q&A. Like it's an interactive thing, and we all learn from each other, and it's really exciting. So if you for that, you can just take the same website, hhphealth.com/dopamine. So hhphealth.com/dopamine. If you're interested in that too, you can always reach out to me on Facebook, and send a private message or something, and go from there.
Great. Well, thank you, Ronnie. It's been a real pleasure having you on. Thank you for giving, an hour and a half of your time. We really appreciate that. We know how precious your time is, and appreciate you choosing to spending it with us, on our show.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's great to meet you, Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Ronnie. Well, Phil's been talking about you for over the last few years, and it's really nice to actually put a face put a face that I can talk to a name, and not just look at a website. Do you know what I mean? That's really special, and being able to talk, like you say, about real things. That's what the show's all about, right? It's about being raw, being real, and evolving out loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so really appreciate you. Like Phil said, I'd like to reiterate that. Really appreciate your time, your knowledge, your wisdom, and who you are. It's great.
Thank you so much. I received that fully. Thank you.
Great. So I'm Phil.
And I'm Phil.
And this has been the Phil and Phil Show. If you want any more information about Phil and Phil Show, just go to philandphil.com. And if you want to make a little donation to keep us going, help pay for our website and stuff, you can just click the donate button on the website. But most of all, we appreciate our tribe, our community of everybody who's watching the show. Hopefully you've got some benefit by us evolving out loud. So thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Ronnie.
All right. Stop the recording.